Hey, what's up, naughty community? Welcome back to my naughty hobby for another easy to follow crochet tutorial with Amber. And today I'm going to be showing you guys how to do this shells in a row stitch combo. As you can see, it creates a really nice fun texture, this ridge that runs alongside of it here in between our shells. Really like how this works up. It's quick and simple. I actually started a scrap blanket with all of my soft secret, and so here's like you know, an example of what it'll work up like as a blanket. And later on in this tutorial, I'm also going to be showing you guys how to create a different look using the exact same stitch combo, but just changing where you put the stitches at. So this is one version that I did where I changed just where I'm going to be putting the post stitches. And then I did another example to show you guys, you know, here on this one, it's a little bit hard to see on camera, but when you hold it to the side, instead of our lines going vertical, they go horizontal. So you'll be able to see a little bit better if I stack them kind of like this. It's still kind of hard to see, but this is all worked up in the same way, just changing, like I said, where you put your stitches. So this must be a new live thing where I can't ever see your guys' comments unless I swipe over. So now I'm seeing that you guys are jumping on and saying hello. Hi, Perlita. I think it's Sarala. Thank you for that compliment. But to start off with, I'm going to show you guys how to do this one. So let's go ahead and get started with that. If you want to have the exact same dimensions that I do when I'm complete with this little swatch or example, I'm going to be using a 4.5 millimeter hook and some worsted weight, medium weight yarn. I'm using Soft Secret in Lilac today. So sorry that my nails are looking hash, by the way. It is gardening season and my hands are in soil a lot, so even when I do my nails, they don't stay nice for very long. Whatever. Still gonna show you guys how to rock out this crochet piece. Let's get my little logo centered there. All right, in order to get this combo to work up correctly, you are going to need to chain a multiple of 6 plus 1 for your foundation row. Since I'm not going to be using the chainless foundation row, I'm going to chain up a total of 28 because we need 3 extra chains for our turn. There's 10. There's 20. All right, after we have our foundation chain done, we are going to go into the 7th chain from our hook. So 1, 2, 3 down, that counts as our first stitch. So there's 4, picture that as our first double crochet. Then what we're going to want to do is skip the next 2 chains there, and we're going to work in our first shell, which is just 2 double crochets. Hold on just one moment. You need to go upstairs, please. Thank you. Okay, well, he's not down here, buddy. Please go upstairs. I'm live right now. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so 7th chain from our hook. We've placed that first double crochet. Now we're going to do a second one. We're going to chain 1, and then into that same stitch we're going to place 2 more double crochets. So our first little shell is created right there. Now we're going to skip the next 2 chains and double crochet into the next. Skip the next 2 chains and do another shell into your next chain, which is 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet, all into the same chain. And we're going to follow this pattern all the way across our foundation chain. So again, skip 2, double crochet, skip 2, shell, going to skip those next 2, do a double crochet into the next, skip the next 2, shell into the next, which is 2 double crochet, chain 1, 2 double crochet. And if any of the stitches that I use in this tutorial are unfamiliar to you, you can always back out of this video, go to my videos tab on my page, and I have lots of tutorials, and the stitches used today are also listed in there a little bit slower if you need them. Okay, and then we should have 2 more stitches to skip and just 1 double crochet into our last chain. Often I talk to you guys about you want your beginning to match your end. And like I explained to you when we first started out, that we did a multiple of 6 plus 1 and then 3 extra chains to count as our turning chain. So this is actually considered a double crochet. So our beginning matches our end. Always bugs me when that gets wonky. Hi, Allie. Then I had to scroll on my comments because once I swiped over, it just stayed at Perlita's comment there. So sorry if I missed anybody, but hello. All right, so at the end of this first row, we're just going to turn our work. And we're always going to start with either a standing double crochet and ending with just a single double crochet. So into our first stitch right here, we're going to do that. And a standing double crochet is just a single crochet with a chain at the top counting as an alternative for a turn. Now we're going to start working those shells into the chain 1 spaces that we created from our previous row. This is going to stay consistent throughout the entire pattern. This is a very simple one to get down. So we will double crochet 2, chain 1, creating a space for our next row of shells to go into. Those 2 more double crochets. So we've got another shell there. Now, this will be the only part of this pattern that changes. Where we did the double crochet in our previous row, we're going to front post double crochet around it now. The way that you do a front post is you yarn over just like you would with a double crochet. We're going to insert our hook to the right of the stitch, going through to the left side, and pull up a loop just like that. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2 more. And that is a front post double crochet. That's what gives our work the texture and makes it stick up a little bit higher than the rest of our stitches. Now we're going to continue that all the way across. That pattern of the 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, then the front post around those single stitches. Always when I'm working into my foundation row where I've actually put stitches, it looks a little wonky. You know, how those front post double crochets kind of pucker up my work, I feel. So at the end of this row, and probably a few more rows into it, I'll show you how to kind of straighten out your work so it looks a little bit more even. I'd suggest working through them a little bit slower so you don't split your yarn. So our first and last stitches will never be post stitches of any kind. They'll always go under both loops, or in this case, because we're working into that foundation chain, we're going to go into this bump here. You can count over 2 from your last stitch. We'll just place a double crochet. So here's how the second row of shells looks. Like I said, if you're feeling like it's looking a little bit wonky because of that first row, you can just pull up, and sometimes you see these 2 loops here that are actually going around. You can move those. So sometimes those are done a little bit lower. See how it moved just a bit to where it lays a little bit straighter with that next row. And you'll be able to do this throughout your whole work, like this piece that's done. After I get finished with 5 or 6 rows, I'll straighten it out because it pulls those post stitches up. All right. Oops, we're not chaining any, we're just turning our work and doing that standing double crochet into the first, working our shells exactly the same way. This part's going to stay consistent. There's our shell. Now, because I want to keep my line on one side, these raised stitches on one side, if we were to put a front post into this stitch here, it's going to leave our raised stitch on the wrong side of our work. So I do a back post double crochet, which is worked the same way as a front post, only we're going to go in through the back. So here's that stitch that we did. You'll yarn over, insert your hook through the back, over to this space, grab your loop of yarn, yarn over, and we're going to finish it like we would just a regular double crochet, pulling through 2, yarning over, pulling through 2. So that is a back post double crochet, but if you flip it around, you can see it's still creating the ledge on the right side of our work. And this row will be done just like that, with our shells and then the back post. Usually my comments scroll as you guys chat, and for whatever reason it's not allowing me to do that, so I'm not being able to see the conversation as it's coming or going. That's bumming me out. I think Facebook has had some changes done to their platform, or they're in the middle of some changes that so far I'm not loving. This kind of pattern where not a lot is changing except for these post stitches makes it for, you know, a great project to basically hang out and binge watch some shows or sit out on your patio, and you know, you don't really have to keep track of counting. And I've been trying to teach myself how to crochet without looking at my hands, and I feel like if you're into that as well, this is a good pattern to try on, because it's easy to feel for those chain one spaces that we create in our shells to work into. And obviously with working with post stitches, it's easy to feel where the post is at as well. So always at the end, remember that this is not our last stitch. This is not our last stitch, but we're working into that chain one that we put on top of our standing double crochet after we did the single. So right here is actually where our last double crochet will go. Here's 3 rows. I'll work out 2 more in this pattern, and then I will show you guys how to create that texture of the other examples that I did. It's pretty crazy how much of a difference just changing where you place your stitches, the effect that it will have over your entire piece. Oh, I see that Lisa is having issues with her comments too. I don't know what's going on with it, but it's being weird. My internet was being weird too. I had to reset my router before I started this live. That's why I was a little bit late today. My internet was being weird, and now the actual live feed is, I'm not loving it. So I'm not trying to be rude. I just don't see that you guys are chatting. All right, now that we have the right side facing us, and I can see that this is where the raised stitches are, we're going to go back to those front post double crochets instead of the back post on this row. And it'll be pretty quick. Like if you make a mistake and, you know, do a back post where you're supposed to be doing a front post, you're going to be able to see it pretty quick. or feel that it feels wrong, you know, once you get a couple of rows into this. See, like it feels, let's just see how a back post would look. See, if you look at your work, as you scan over, you're going to see, oh, you know, I totally did that one, did the wrong post. You can get good rhythm with this pattern too, and it'll just like zip right along. Skipping all of these, going into the top of that standing double crochet. All right, so I feel like we have a pretty good understanding. I am going to scroll just to see. Okay. Okay, so maybe you guys are talking about the starting chain, which, just a quick reminder, I always post my videos to my page after I'm finished, so you guys can go back and watch it at a slower pace if you need to, or fast forward, or do whatever you got to do with it. Those are posted. All right, now I'm going to switch it up a little bit to show you guys how I created. We'll do this one first, which kind of creates, when you do these differently, kind of creates this wave texture. It's kind of hard. There's a better visual of it, where it just reminds me of a rolling seat. So I'll show you how I did that one. Like always, we're going to start with a standing double crochet. This doesn't change. Now, our shells will be worked the exact same way. But now we're going to start alternating how we do the post stitches. So before we wanted all of our post stitches and our raised stitches to be on one side. Now, because the last one that I did was that front post, I'm going to do front post again. So we will always, to create that different texture, no matter where your stitch is, it's always going to be a front post double crochet. We'll do a couple rows of that so we can see the change happen throughout the pattern. I'm so bummed that the comments are being weird today. My favorite part of coming on live is getting to chat with you guys. It's really taken away from the experience, making me stay on track. Maybe there's some people who are like, thank God. I always get a little off topic. That's when I'm known to make more mistakes. I should have at least taken the nail polish off of my fingers today before this tutorial. They're really driving me crazy. So I think I'll do like three or four rows of each different variation I'm going to show you guys. Probably should have color changed to make it a bit more noticeable. I might do that with the next one. So again, even though our stitch is falling back here, we're doing front post. Also with these post stitches, it's really nice that we're using them between shells because it makes it so accessible to get good rhythm down as you work your way through this pattern. Didn't want to split my yarn. So we can already see it starting to change. I think I'll do another row. Drives me crazy when that goes crooked. Still crooked, whatever. And if you're just jumping on and you're like, wow, she's going pretty fast, I like to mention about this far through my tutorials that the beginning of my videos are always a lot slower, so I can show you precisely what I'm doing, but as the tutorial goes on and I show different things, I do go a little bit faster. If you're new here and you're like, man, this isn't for me, I hope that you stick around and, check out some of my other videos if you jumped on too late to see the beginning of this one. I have lots to choose from. All right, now we're going to switch it up one last time on this new row. Again, very little. The stitches are not going to change that we've already been using. I'm going to show you how I did this one here, where the lines are actually, instead of running vertical, or running horizontal. Gives it a little bit of a, like a pocket texture, I think is the best way to put it. So in the first row of this, again, we're always starting with a standing double crochet. Now, instead of putting our shells into this chain one spot here, the first stitch is going to be a front post around that middle one. And then the second double crochet is also going to go around that same post. Well, gotta get that to focus. Still doing our chain 1. And now we're going to work the 2 more double crochets front post around our next double crochet in that previous shell. So I'm going to work these 2. They can feel a little funny at first when you get, when you switch up whatever pattern you've been using. Oh, that's lovely. You guys have heard me complain about different yarns doing stuff like this. Don't like it. Don't like it at all. Okay, so that's how our first shell should be looking. Before we go on, I'm going to show you, because I'm very much a visual person when it comes to learning. So when you do your next shell, you're going to skip that first one and leave out these last 2. So you'll work your first 2 stitches around this one, chain 1, and then you're going to work your next 2 stitches around that one. That's how that will go. Now, as for our double crochet, if you wanted to work it around a post to give even more texture, feel free. It's going to even change your work a little bit more. But I just did them through both of the loops on the top there. Don't mind that ugly chunk of broken up yarn. But now we'll work on that next shell. So 2 around that stitch, and I kind of fold my work over to make more of a space to work the front post into that stitch. Change it up a little bit. Same thing with this one. I didn't do the chain 1, which isn't a huge deal. You can still fit stitches between, but I'm glad I caught it. We're still doing the chain 1. So double crochet, just regular. And really, I just work these up because I want to inspire you guys to, step out of your comfort zone or be a little bit more creative in how you do your next piece. Don't be afraid to try new things, especially when it comes to crochet, because it's so forgiving too. Like, you make a mistake and most of the time it's pretty easy to cover it up, but you never know what kind of wonderful pattern or stitch combo you might come up with just by, or texture, just by changing where you're placing your stitches. Also makes it look like maybe it's a lot more difficult than what it really is. And I think that's cool. At least my boys are up there getting along. I can hear them making noises, zombie monster noises. Now, I wanted my little pockets of shells to only be on one side. So for the example piece here, my next row, I didn't work any of the shells as the posts like I did in that previous row. So I started with a standing double crochet and then just worked, at this point, what I would consider like a standard shell. The 2 double crochet into the center, chain 1, 2 double crochet into that same chain space, and also kept the single double crochets in between, just in the top. Not a whole lot of counting needed for this pattern, which is nice. You know, I feel like I've been doing pretty good with chatting and staying, you know, staying the course with what's needed. There's the little bit of flare on the yarn. Stitch just completely out of control. Now, if you would have done, you know, your shell stitches as posts on this row, you would have, you know, like this almost zigzag look to your work. It'd probably give it more of a texture, because now our shells would be bowed out, you know, on this side. So it'd give it like a double ridged look, which could have been kind of cool. I would encourage you to try it to see how it works out. But for this one, we're going to do every other row. And I'll probably just work up 2 more rows of this with you guys before hopping off of here. So again, the first half of our shells are going to go as post stitches around the innermost stitch there. Still chaining 1, and then working those front post stitches around the very next double crochet. And I probably ended up doing every other row because working the stitches this way is kind of a pain. Pretty sure I kept, you know, splitting my yarn or going through the center of the stitch. Was never this first one that I struggle with. Those set you up to think it's going to be easy peasy. It's this second one that I feel I really need to take my time with so I don't split my yarn. Now again, following with my pattern for this next and final row, I'm going to just do like standard shells and those single double crochets just through both of the loops. So I think that's a total of 4 rows of each. And hopefully once we're complete with this, you'll be able to see what I'm talking about. You guys, it's a miracle. I'm pretty sure I can hear my daughter upstairs doing the dishes without being asked. I'm doing a little dance. I did tell her that if she can do the dishes to my standards for 30 days in a row, that might seem a little dramatic, but that it is what it is. That's for another discussion. If she could do them for 30 days in a row the right way, without me having to like scrub off food that she missed or whatever it is, that I would start teaching her younger brother how to do the dishes so she won't have to do them as her chore anymore. And I'm really happy to hear the initiative right now. Sometimes getting my kids to do chores is like pulling teeth. All right, so the texture change is done, and it's really kind of difficult to see on camera, but the first 4 rows we did in the standard pattern, the one that I initially had uploaded for this stitch tutorial today, where the lines are just going vertical here. The second texture that we have, all done in the same stitch, just we changed the placement of where we were putting those front post and back post stitches. In the second section here, we went through always the front post, no matter, you know, what side of the work we were on. And then in our final one, we did the, you know, alternating rows where we went through the innermost stitches to place, you know, front post stitches to create a horizontal line instead of the vertical one. Again, this was all done just by changing around where you put your stitches. I think it's so cool that you can change the work so dramatically. That way you don't start to feel what's the word that I'm looking for? It's like, so you don't start feeling like you're doing the same thing over and over, super bored with your work. I'm going to flip the camera around so I can chat with you guys. You know, so you don't get bored with the exact same stitch, especially if you're just starting out and you're still feeling intimidated by, you know, learning all of the stitches that there are. You can use the one that you know and totally change your work. Just like with these little example pieces, maybe from a distance, you guys will be able to see it just a little bit clearer, that all of these are the same stitch, just different placement. I'm having like a real proud mom moment over here, since my kids didn't really fight while I was live, and sounds like they're maybe getting some of their chores done. Maybe a little trip to the pool today is what they're working towards. I don't know. Anyways, that about sums up the tutorial, though. I'm glad that everybody who did jump on, you know, said something. Sorry that the comments were like, I'm still not really even seeing the comments. They're being really weird today. Thanks, Elizabeth. I don't know. Okay. Throw. I see some people are asking, there is a question that I will address real quick. How do you determine the number of chains you need to do a throw or blanket? I'm new to crocheting. I love this stitch. It looks so easy. This is a really fun stitch. And so this is how I like to gauge blankets that I'm doing. And it's probably going to sound really unconventional. I think a lot of people who do fiber arts, they They're very much into having correct counts and all of that and being precise with their work, which is great. I'm just not really one of those kinds of people. So what I do is, if I was creating a throw blanket, I would chain out, you know, a long chain, and I would gauge it on myself. You know, I would hold my long, let's say that this is my chain, because this is what I did with this blanket. I didn't really take any measurements, and oh, good, I can show you what I'm about to tell you here. So I create whatever size of chain that I need, and then I start with my pattern. I don't even count my chains. I just do what's going to be comfortable for me, or I'll use my kids as a model to say, you know, chain it and then hold it up against them and be like, yeah, they'd be able to wrap their whole body or cover up or, you know, gauge it that way. I never count out my chains though, you guys. And this is why. Because like with this pattern, I didn't count out my chains, but I have these 3 extra little chains that you can see here because the count wasn't exactly on. This is one of the perks to using a chain instead of a chainless foundation, because after this blanket is completely done, all I have to do is go out and pull out those 3 extra stitches that I had in that initial chain without having to go back and like count or anything. I've never been huge to be exactly precise with the measurements when creating a blanket, unless a customer, you know, has very specific dimensions. Then I go more off of what would be comfortable for me, or you know, using what I have, just so I don't have to put that extra, I guess, mental work into figuring out the precise chains. I get a lot of people who ask me how to number it out, and that would be my biggest suggestion. If you're watching one of my videos that starts with a chain, you can do this with any type of stitch. And if you're worried like, oh, well, I'm not, you know, it's not going to be long enough, just always, you know, whatever your repeat number is, when you reach the length that you like, go ahead and do one more repeat. So for like this one, I would reach the length that I want, and then I would do 7 more stitches. Be like, that should be totally good. And if it's a little bit too long, I'm just going to, you know, pull out a few extra ones at the end of my chain. So that would be my best, I guess, suggestion when it comes to counting. And if you are doing a pattern, obviously that doesn't require like a multiple of anything, then I would definitely say don't count. I don't know. But I'm going to go up. I'm going to make some lunch. If you guys have any other questions or stitch tutorial requests or anything like that, please don't hesitate to message me. I try to get back to you as soon as I can. I do have 3 kids and a busy household, so I'm not always quick about that. I apologize, but I do want to hear from you guys. I do want to keep teaching. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, and I really appreciate everybody who watched today. Happy hooking, and I'll talk to you guys all real soon. See you later.